stuff. I was really cool. I'm Mary Huck, and I used to work at the museum a while back, so that's where I learned how to operate the spinning wheel. But of course, if you're going to talk about this, you really have to go back to the earlier steps. Usually the first thing you'd be thinking about is your product. You're going to start out with your sheep. And we had those in Wisconsin from the earliest farm days. They were raised for meat and also for the wool. Now, after a year of growing wool, when it's time to shear them in the spring, the sheep are, of course, filthy. And so after you had sheared them, and the shears was like a big scissors, the first thing you'd have to do is start washing it. So they would find some flowing water or a pond or something like that, wash out most of the lanolin or the oil that was with them. But when you looked at the final product, you're still going to see darkening, which is the oil, or could be manure or bits of straw or anything like that chunk of straw that's right there. So the first job for somebody, which was usually the kids, would be to pull apart the wool just to get it loose. One of the things that's cool about wool, or why it was so easy to spin, is it just has a natural tendency to stick together. You can't see, look at under a microscope or something, but there's thousands of tiny little hooks, and the hooks will cling and to almost like Velcro. When the wool had been washed and dried, you would card it. They're just hundreds of bent wires. And this type right here is what you'd use for home use if you were doing it. But they had some that were bigger, and it could make a little different kind of yarn depending on how you combed it as well. And you also, if you look real close, you like the long fibers. And so when you get one of these little things here, that's not going to spin well. It would spin up into make a knot. Very important to get the right push on it. Smack it down in like that, you'll never get it to move. And that, you can see how it'll straighten it out. And when it's all pretty much all in there, then I need to get the stuff that's on this side. Just peel it off. And I keep going again until you can no longer get any coming off the back side, or actually in this case the top side. And a little more straw there, and you can see it's all just kind of tucked in there. So now we need to pull it off, and that's just kind of catch it on the edge, and I peel. And if you look on this side, it looks pretty good. But if you look on this side, we still have some lumps. So you'd probably need to do this again from the other side. But assuming that it was done, and you have this nice thick band, then you just kind of roll it just a little to tuck the ends in. And then you would give that to somebody to spin. And if it took you 5 minutes to do this, she could spin through that in a minute. Or you're starting off like this. The great thing about wool is I just fray it a little bit, and then I stick it overlapping a little bit. And then when I start up again, that'll just twist together, and I'll keep going from there. So the spinner can do, I don't know, dozens of these things in the time it takes a person to maybe get a couple of them ready. So you might need 2 people working just to get the wool ready for the spinner, and then the spinner gets going. Generally speaking, you can card when you're, like 5 years old. You might start spinning or learning how to do it by the time you're 7 or so. It's not that complicated. And in a state like Wisconsin, they're going to be working with wool. If I was living someplace in the South, they might be spinning cotton, which can also spin. This kind, what they figured out was how they would be able to power it with your foot, leave both hands free to control what you are doing, and also at the same time wrap the yarn up. So if you look, I get it going with my foot, and then all I need to do is just pull up a little bit of the yarn at a time, of the wool, sorry, and then the spinning wheel just kind of sucks it right in there, keeping up a twist. When I pump with my foot, that causes the rod to move up and down. That makes the large wheel spin. And then that string that I showed you, that is attached to the smaller wheel. The smaller wheel has a smaller radius or diameter. It moves a lot faster, and that pulls in the yarn and wraps it around the spool. In order for this to operate properly, you have to regulate your tension a little bit. This turns and spins this, and it's got to spin it at the right speed, otherwise it won't suck in and wrap. So when you look down here, this is working on a screw, and it will loosen or tighten to control what you've got. And you have a couple of options also on where you put the cord to see if you want it to spin faster or slower. Now, the yarn is quite thin. You can make it a little thicker, a little thinner. But most of the time, the yarn that was spun was quite thin. And if you wanted to make something like, socks out of this, good hard-wearing socks, this is not what you want. So this is 1 ply. So there is a way where you can spin this, take your 2 balls or 2 pieces of yarn, and using the spinning wheel, spin them again, and then you'll get a 2-ply twist. And when you first start spinning like this, you're going to turn the wheel to the right, and that'll spin one way. Now, when I want those 2 plies to go together, I can't keep spinning in the same direction, or it won't work. They won't grab each other. So then I have to spin the wheel to the left, and that'll cause the 2 of them to twist around together strong. Once this part here is full, we could simply take this, and it's gonna disconnect the cords here, and then you'll be able to slide out the spool. Most of the sheep, if they had a choice, would be white, because that allowed you to dye wool. You could buy some commercial dyes, indigo, madder, something like that early on. Or you could use some of the ones that you'd find in the fields. This one is goldenrod. This one is also goldenrod, but it has some copper sulfate, and the copper gives things a greenish tint. You don't always know exactly how it's going to turn out, and you're not going to get really vibrant colors, not the way you do with indigo, which gives you all kinds of blues. They oftentimes did things with nuts, because when it comes right down to it, this is not an easy thing for somebody to make up at home in the evenings. I mean, it is doable, but it's tricky to get everything to work properly. So not everyone would have this. It was oftentimes one of the things that you brought with you as an immigrant. You can pack down, you knew you needed one, and then they show up in Wisconsin. Say though, by 1860, 1870, most families would not really depend on this. And certainly in Wisconsin, we were not spinning our own yarn because we were making blankets or clothes or anything like that. There's only a few exceptions. Some people that, this is part of their tradition. Grandma always spins, she sets up and she spins. Or if there was something unusual, during the Civil War, for example, federal government is buying all of the wool that it can get, and supplies locally were sometimes harder to get. you got a good price for your wool, so people that were raising sheep would increase their flocks, and then they might do some more at home as well. When you start adding up all of the steps from raising the sheep to shearing, to washing, to carding, to spinning, to plying again, and then all you've got is the yarn so that you can start knitting. They all darned all of their socks. I mean, they didn't throw away those socks until they had been made over 4 times. Take the bottom off, sew, re-knit another bottom for the sock. It's amazing, because socks, mittens, all those things are terribly time consuming.